again, Andy's here, Shell's here, Mark's here. And just to quickly jump to where we were on this one, we're talking about Staveley's case v Barclays in here. And just to take it back a little bit, we'll start with Shell on this one. Before we get to the whole cross-examine thing, do you want to explain the whole case and why? Well, not the whole case. You don't have to go in that much depth.
If you can take it back to the very start.
Welcome to the 9-hour live stream.
But just why is she in court? And a brief description of that.
Well, to be honest, I haven't looked into it in a whole lot of detail. She's obviously having a civil dispute with Barclays, and I don't know how much the amounts are involved, but what I can tell you from the general process is that she'll have had a discussion with her lawyers about the prospects of success and the cost of litigation, which is always uncertain. So she will know going into this that there's might not win, and she's a very intelligent businesswoman, so there's absolutely no way that she's gone into this relying on winning for her finances' sake. Obviously, with these kind of cases, the general rule, and I'm sure Adam, because he's been watching it, will tell us at the end, but the way costs are awarded is that she'll have to pay a fair bit and she'll probably pay her own costs. So just to bring it back to the relevant point about the takeover, it's not going to have any influence on the owners and directors test. You're allowed to have civil disputes. Obviously, prominent business people, obviously banks are involved in a lot of disputes because of the nature of what they do. It's not going to have any relevance to that. And if she's found that she doesn't win because of the evidence that she's given, that will be a small part of what's taken into account, but it doesn't necessarily mean that she's a liar. In criminal courts, the jury make a decision, and if they find someone not guilty, it doesn't mean that the victim is automatically a liar. They just haven't reached the burden of proof that they believe her case over someone else's. So everyone just chill out a bit,
We're talking about a lot of money here as well, aren't we? That she's hoping to get in compensation wise out of this. I'm sure weeks and weeks ago when this takeover thing was first getting mentioned that she's expecting a lot of million from this if it was to go ahead and work in her favour, isn't she?
Yeah, and obviously that's the reason that she's balanced like having the litigation and the cost of doing that, and obviously it will make a difference to her financially, but in terms of the 10% stake that we believe that she's going to have in NUFC, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. And in terms of her role in the NUFC transaction, it seems to us more that PIF want her expertise and they want to use her as more of a go-between than them being interested in her cash, because obviously they don't need it.
And I think the difference between the Newcastle takeover and the Man City takeover is, rumour has it that she's going to have an acting role at Newcastle United and not just broker this deal on this one. So in the last 24 hours, she's been getting cross-examined. I'll go to you on this one, Andy. So she's given a lot of criticism on this, saying she's not really coping with coming under a scrutiny on this one and not really coming to terms and being very confident in her answers. Do you think that that's what you would expect by anyone but sat in there in front of a judge?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be the most difficult part of the entire trial and legal process for her. She's coming up against QC, who's backed by a massive legal team. QCs are basically just the best barristers in the land, and they'll have been planning for months, if not years, to pick apart every single element of her story. And they're obviously their job is to find the smallest hole and try and make that as wide as possible. So they are going to pull at her for things that she might not necessarily know about, that they know that her memory's not great on. She can't just lie. She'll know the gist of what's going to be thrown at her, but I don't know if anyone's watched it even for just 10 minutes, you can see how in-depth it all is. They're saying, can you remember this one specific conversation you had 15 years ago? And she's like, well, no, not really. So I don't think you can really blame her for what's going on. I think obviously the context of it's to do with, I think, 2008 when all the banks went bust. I think she did something with the Man City owners to bail it all out. So it's obviously massive, massive money. And we know it's got something to do with the takeover because of those documents that were filed a while back, but probably not actually important from our point of view.
Yeah, so I'm going to put it and bring it back in terms of situations that normal people would have been in here. And I remember a few years back, I was in a car crash, and it was at the point where we both had to go to court and sit in front of a judge in this tiny little room. And basically, I was cross-examined. I had to draw pictures of where my car was on the road, where I was turning in the road and stuff like that. And I was shitting my pants in this little room. There's only 3 were there. So it's a tough situation to be in, sat in front of a judge, because they make you feel as if you're lying when you're not. And that's the whole point, isn't it? So trying to pressurize you into making a mistake on this one.
But that's it. They're trying to make you feel as uncomfortable as possible so that you don't sound confident in what you're saying.
It
and
bloody
try,
work,
like
mate.
you're
I'll
saying.
tell you that.
Yeah, that's what it like. As Andy's just said there, that they're trying to trip you up. They're picking up on any little thing that you're saying. If there's any doubt whatsoever, then you can. I mean, I'm struggling to remember what I had for me tea last week, let alone what I did in 2008 on certain dates and
It
stuff
would have
like
been a
that.
garlic bread special, mate.
So you
I'll
can
help you out.
imagine, you can just imagine what it would be like to be in that position.
So one of the things which did happen in the courtroom, which was quite entertaining looking from the outside in, is BBC reporter Dan Rowan, I think his surname is, decided to take a screenshot of the Zoom and whatever it was being broadcast on and post it on social media, which forced the courtroom to stop and basically him getting a telling off.
Naughty.
So have you two, obviously I'm looking at Andy and Shell in this one, have you ever known anything so ridiculous? Is it a case where we're in this day and age where everything's done via Zoom and Skype, where people just completely forgetting the rules of a courtroom?
I think it's something you wouldn't even think about necessarily. You just think, oh, it's just a harmless screenshot, and then obviously the judge is calling you out to the world saying, "This is a criminal offence, by the way, pal." I bet he absolutely just bricked it in that moment. But yeah, it is ridiculous, really, and the fact that it kept going on, more and more people kept taking screenshots, and he threatened to stop the whole thing because of it.
So when they're taking screenshots on this one, are they only aware once they get posted on social media and someone reports that person for uploading them?
Pretty much, I would have thought. It doesn't. Zoom doesn't tell you you're doing a screen capture or anything like that. So
it's probably not that sophisticated if it's the UK court system, because it's usually crap.
Right, so we'll move on from everything to do with Staveley at the moment. We'll come back to the whole takeover at the end of this one. But
there was just one thing I was going to mention.
At
least the papers have now got some new pictures of her.
Some new photos, yeah.
They've got some new photos to use in all of the talk about her. And gotta say, she's looking a bit.
Oh, right, stop there, just in case you're watching, mate. Stop there, right? I know what you like. Stop it. But
very cat-like.
Shut up. Right, moving on. Right, so Danny Rose, he's came under some criticism, well, quite a bit over the last week or 2 weeks. You can think. I know we had a go at him on the All Smile and Faces podcast, thinking, is he the type of player you want in the team? He doesn't seem committed to Newcastle. We've seen photos of him over the last 48 hours, and he looks a little bit chunky.
He's certainly committed to his local chip shop, isn't he?
So, he stated when he first came to Newcastle that he couldn't get decent fish and chips in London. So I think he's found a decent fish and chip shop now, mate, because he does look a little bit hefty. So what's your thoughts on this one, Shell? Is it a worry for you?
I mean, all of us have got a little bit locked down, chubby. Not saying you guys specifically, but I
You've
think
just
we've
literally
all
said
struggled.
all of us.
Thanks for that, Shell. Yeah.
Cheers.
God.
Cheers, Shell.
How to make me feel good about ourselves.
Cheers.
Just be
So I think I think it's difficult because it'll be interesting to see when the Premier League obviously comes back in a few days. I can't wait. How everybody deals with the physical elements of it and the fitness, and I think everybody will struggle. I mean, obviously footballers have got a duty to keep themselves in some sort of shape, but they won't have been doing, I would imagine, anywhere near the sort of training and exercise regime that they were doing before. So I think it'll be interesting. I think obviously now the spotlight's been on him. He's probably going to be hoping that he has a pretty good 90 minutes, but it'll be interesting to see. But I'm not angry at him.
Oh, that was really nice. The end of there.
Just disappointed. Not angry, just disappointed.
No, I've gone in heavy, two-footed on all of you.
See, if this was Decker and Decker would be going wild at him now, call them anything. And Chelsea, I don't hate him for it. But on the back of that, we found out today that the 25-man squad isn't going to be extended. I think a lot of were hoping to see the likes of Paul Dummett at least get a number in that squad and have an opportunity to play. It's not the case anymore, so we're pretty reliant on Rose there at left back, aren't we, Andy?
Yeah, pretty much. It's basically just him now, isn't it? Unless we're pulling someone out of position. I guess Richie can go in there as well. But yeah, I mean, if it was just a one-off thing and he comes back a bit unfit, I don't think anyone could really blame him. But when you look at what Spurs fans all said about him when he left Spurs, they all just said he was never committed. He's a great footballer, but can't be bothered, basically. It does worry you slightly when he's come back and he looks like all those dominoes he ordered for the NHS. He's just wolfed down himself.
He had all the crusts. Send the crusts back up here.
He just went minesweeping for all the dregs. But yeah, it is a bit worrying, isn't it? I mean, Rose is one of those people that you always, when he's playing for other teams, you just always rate him because he's played for England and stuff like that and playing the Champions League. And now he's at your own club and you see all the cracks, you start worrying a bit, don't you?
I think
hard to imagine the size of his crack. Jesus.
but one of the things that I want to mention, when Jethro signed, we all said Jethro was a bit chunky, didn't we? And he was decent playing for one on that left hand side. So it's a case where we're just looking at a photo and assuming he's a little bit overweight, or we've got to wait to see him play, really, don't we?
I think if you think back to when he came to on loan, the first couple of pictures that were seen of him then, he looked overweight then. He looked that he hadn't been playing and he'd put on a bit of weight and stuff like that. Whereas this time around, he looks even bigger than he did. So I don't know. It's one of those ones where you do see players like during the pre-season and stuff like that, where they're coming back in and trying to get up to match fitness. They have put a bit of weight on. He's going to be one of those players you can see once he retires, where he goes absolutely massive. He'll be like the Prince Nassim of football.
Ricky Hatton.
Yeah. So, but I think to be fair to him, he did lose the excess weight over a couple of weeks once he did get into the swing of things and start training again and stuff like that. And maybe that's what, the first few games that he played for us, he didn't set the world alight, and people put it down to fitness and his weight and stuff like that. So are we going to have that whole situation again where it takes him a little while to get into the rhythm of things and get himself match fit?
I'm gonna take some questions because there's quite a few being sent in there, and let's have a look at this one. So Kieran sends in, do any of you think we may have an answer shortly after the WTO statement? And shall I know you and Risa have done a little bit of digging on this one, and is there even a date set on when we're going to see this report, or is it still up in the air at the moment?
I think there is a date. I think Reece sent an email and they came back. I think it might be the 17th of June, but I'm sure someone will write in if it's different. I think there's been a bit of confusion about whether the Premier League have seen it or they haven't. There is no doubt in our minds that the Premier League know exactly what the contents of that report is, and they know the strength of what's going to be said in it and what the connections are being made as. So from my perspective, I think the Premier League are doing everything that they can. Obviously, the articles that have come out this week have highlighted the complications with the piracy issues. And I think that anybody reading, for example, the Athletic article will be able to tell why those issues are so complicated. And I think it's a case of resolving those. And then I think that we'll get the news. But again, it's very difficult for us to put a timeline on, because whilst we're all hopeful it will happen as soon as possible, if the timeline passes, then people come in for a lot of criticism.
Yeah, that was one of the questions which you were asked when we done our recording the other day. Someone saying, do you think the Premier League will have some sort of timeline on things as well? And it's really impossible for the Premier League to set any sort of guidelines or timeline on this, and a date which they need to announce if it's gone ahead or not, because just like ourselves, we're all waiting to find out the WTO report. And like you said, that we're not even sure if they've got it. It's all speculation at the moment.
I think that's everything with the takeover is speculation, isn't it? I think that's what a lot of the problems are, is because we've been waiting so long. People are making up stories, having to second guess what's going on, because as we've seen, the amount of contradictions that you see from one person alone, let alone a number of journalists from one paper, is huge. And it's speculation. People are guessing and just having to make a story up. So nobody knows.
On the back of speculation, Mike Ashley's invested in Hugo Boss, hasn't he, recently? And a lot of people are saying, where's Mike Ashley getting this money from? Is it anything to do with the takeover? And I think personally, the answer is no. It's got nothing to do. Yeah, it's nothing to do with the takeover. Him buying and having an investment in Hugo Boss, it's not in relation to him receiving a payout or money from selling the club. it's one of those things. We've seen it for how many years. He invested in the likes of Game. He invested in those. Was it Cruise as well? Did he not buy Cruise in Newcastle and a few other stores?
Yeah, and he opened a new one on Northumberland Street, didn't he?
And obviously House of Fraser recently. So
Well,
it's
he's saving a few million by shutting down all the Debenhams, isn't he? Obviously, he closed the one in the Metro Centre earlier on this week. There's a few others that have gone in recent months as well. So,
so have any got any other thoughts on that one? As a case where it's literally got nothing to do with this takeover.
No, I think if you look at how long the Newcastle takeover's taken, people think that all of a sudden he's invested in Hugo Boss overnight. That'll have been negotiated for months and months and months. It'll have no bearing on the takeover at all. But obviously, he's filthy rich anyway. We know none of his money is dependent on Newcastle. So
he's just probably sold some wallpaper.
Yeah.
Sports Direct reopened probably.
Yeah. But he said, I mean, Hugo Boss are a big part of, like you mentioned there, Chris, with Cruise and stuff like that. They've always been a big part of the setup within those shops. So he's obviously got a relationship with them through that, and they've obviously been looking for a bit of money. They've had some bad press in the few months with various goings on, and obviously we had the whole situation where Joe Lycett went after them and stuff like that, and they got bad press from that as well. So again, they were probably desperate for a little bit of money. He's got plenty of it lying around, as we all know, and I think people are just putting 2 and 2 together and coming up with 6.
Yeah.
I mean, he can't spend the deposit money if that's what people are suggesting that it is. There's no way that he can spend the deposit money, regardless of what the terms of agreement are, as to whether he would keep the deposit money if it falls through. And obviously, as far as we can be sure, 99% sure, it's still with the Premier League, so he hasn't got the rest of the cash already. And I agree with Andy. It's obviously been in the making for a long time. He picks out investments far in advance to work out which companies are going to be struggling, and then wonderfully, ethically just buys them up when they're in trouble.
I think one of the things people have been thinking on this one is that for some reason people have got in their heads that Mike Ashley may have had a heads up that this is going through, hence why he's spending extra money. But I think as soon as Mike Ashley finds out that the Premier League, if they do go ahead and give this the green light, I don't think we'll be far behind them, will we?
Wouldn't have thought so.
I agree. Yeah, he wants to get rid of us, doesn't he? So he'll be very happy to say
so. I know when we first heard about the takeover, one of the things which Ashley wanted to do was come out and tell everybody that the club was looking at changing ownership, and apparently PIF, the Saudis, Staveley, Reuben brothers weren't happy with that, saying that we are the buyers of the club potentially, so if any news is going to get released, then it's going to come from us. Obviously, we haven't seen that from any party, really. The only things we're seeing is the documents on Companies House briefly. Doesn't really give you much information, but we all think it's going down the right path and everything.
Yeah, and usually in these kind of commercial agreements, usually it's the buyer that gets to make those decisions about press releases and information being passed on, not usually the seller, although who knows with Mike Ashley.
Exactly.
I'd be surprised if he himself comes out and says something. I think it'll just be a statement from the club of that the takeover's gone through or hasn't gone through in a worst case scenario.
So I think I probably think it'll come from the likes of PIF, because we're seeing those buy a lot of companies in the last couple of months there, and statements are always coming directly through them. So I would imagine it'll come through them. If not, it's probably going to come as a joint statement between the club and themselves, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think Shell's right as well. I think the majority of the time the reason the buyer does it is because the seller doesn't care anymore. They're done. They're just walking away from it. Why would they waste any more time? Usually it's the legal teams that prepare the statements. So you'd imagine it's something that's being put in that agreement that we know is being signed and exchanged. So it'll already be agreed who's going to do the announcement. So it is literally now just a case of the Premier League pulling the finger out. And we just don't know whether it could literally just be on this bloke's desk and he just hasn't got around to it yet. Or it could be that there is something more going on. You just don't know, do you?
This bloke's desk, that's filled as full of confidence, that mate. So has anyone seen the US Office?
Yeah.
So that just made me think of Creed, like in the office, like doing nothing, just pretending he's doing stuff. There's just paperwork getting higher and higher, and we're in the middle of that somewhere. That's really worrying, mate.
It's just sat there on somebody's desk underneath the packed lunch that they took in one day, like just before lockdown, and like they just didn't have a chance to open, and it sat there with these ham and peas pudding sarnies.
To be fair, Creed would just sign it off. I don't think he would take this long.
That is true, mate. That is true.
He would have just done it by now. But yeah, that's obviously the frustrating thing, isn't it?
I cannot say, as I say, I think like we know, Ashley is out of love with the club. He's probably just going to want to wash his hands with it. I can see that, if it does go through, the statements happening from PIF and then having a club statement, and then I think probably a few months down the line there'll be something where Ashley does an appearance on Sky Sports News or something like that, and gets interviewed by one of his friends, probably Mr. Craig, where he talks about the situation and tries to paint himself in a pretty light. But we all know it'll be a load of bollocks.
Exactly. While we're talking about takeover, this is for you, Shell. So there's a lot of people send this one in. It's a different question than what you normally get asked, because I know you've been getting a lot of repeat questions over the last couple of weeks on this one. You keep directing everyone back to the threads, which you and Reese done 8 weeks ago. But people are wondering how Reese is getting on at the moment, because it seems to be pretty active on Twitter at the moment between him and Miguel Delaney.
So as you know, I was late coming on here to talk to you guys because there was like some sparks coming out of my keyboard because he was having a massive argument with I don't actually know what the latest is. He was just furiously typing away.
Can I just say, was he actually using the keyboard?
Yeah.
That is amazing. Like,
That's
I've never known
one.
There he is.
Desktop.
I've never known anybody to use a keyboard whilst using Twitter, and
There he
Reese is
is.
like this.
I can see the steam coming out of his ears.
He's like a genius. His name was spoken and he just popped up and appeared.
I'm basically the Newcastle Law Genie. I've broken the keyboard.
Well,
So
you've granted
Reece-
her a few wishes.
Reese, one of the questions which has been sent in me is basically your current argument, which is happening with Miguel Delaney, someone who's criticised this takeover a lot since day one. So how's it going at the minute? Are you winning?
I think the fans would probably say I'm winning, but I don't know how independent they are. He did a lot better than I thought he would, to be fair to him. But it's difficult for him to argue against Saudi investment when he works for a newspaper owned partly by Saudi Arabia.
Have you mentioned that to him yet? Because he normally dodges that bullet. Of course you have. Why am I even
having the
doubting you?
discussion on a Saudi partly owned platform.
Yeah. And then said that they shouldn't be allowed to invest in social institutions when a newspaper is a social institution. But there we are.
This takeover's mad though. It's just brought out everybody who just doesn't need to have an opinion on it, just kicking off.
I don't need to have an opinion on it, that's for sure.
You do. You absolutely do need to have an opinion.
So Reese, how long do you think it'll be before you're a fully converted Newcastle fan on this one?
I mean, I probably was there about 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, it took a little bit of a downturn because I took him to a few games last season, and the atmosphere at the Emirates was just so shit. Thought we might have lost him, but pulled it back, didn't we?
Been to the Emirates twice now, and each time it's been one of the biggest disappointments of my life.
So if this takeover goes through, I know you are 80% the other week. Are you still sat at 80%?
I'm still at 80%.
Oh yeah.
Even though I've had like pretty severe bollockings for being at 80%. She didn't talk to me for 3 days. It was really awkward. The dog was really upset.
So if this goes through though, if it goes through, can we get you to get a cans tattoo?
I doubt it.
Oh man, I thought I was gonna.
Where's the commitment? Come on.
That wasn't a
massive
direct no.
commitment,
That was, I doubt it.
He's made several other very silly decisions, so probably leave it with him.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I think if this takeover goes through, if we're set on a date on it, so if it goes through before the middle of July, so in a month's
That's
time,
a long time.
by the 12th of July,
Well,
right?
let's say the 11th because that's my birthday.
Right.
11th of
You're
July.
not going to get me to agree to it.
So
No,
if it,
when he thought that football was coming home the year before
to be
last,
fair.
we definitely both agreed very drunkenly to get a tattoo.
When I did make an agreement that if England got to the World Cup final in 2018, I would get the tattoo of SBC because I referred to one of my friends as a small bollocks. Swear
Right,
word
okay.
begins to. And that was the agreement, but thankfully it didn't happen.
So we'll decide now. Like, is 11th of July. If it goes through, we're
Because I'm
getting
familiar with peer pressure. And normally it works.
hashtag cans.
This is a
Hashtag
legally
cans.
binding
Why not?
contract, I may add.
It is. That's it.
If
We've got
Miguel gets
independent
one, I'll
witnesses
get
and
one.
everything.
I'll get one, mate.
No, if you can get Miguel to get one which says no to Saudi, then I'll get hashtag cans.
We'll have to find out where the tattooing came from first before Miguel signs up for it.
Ethical ink.
Right.
Leave you all to it.
We'll move on from Miguel. Cheers, Reese.
No worries, nice to see you all.
Right. So, what I want to talk about, Mark, your favourite subject on this one. We've played a couple of games now. We've had a Newcastle 11 v Newcastle 11, and we've also had a game against Middlesbrough's first team. And everybody's favourite striker, everybody's favourite number 9, Joe Linton, scored in both games. Once again, it's still not good enough for some people. So what are your thoughts on that one, mate?
Honestly, it just beggars belief. You know, that like the kids sticking the ball in the back of the net, which everybody's been asking him to do, and he's still coming in for a load of crap for it. That it's freaky goals. He couldn't miss. The latest one where he done a fantastic dummy on the defender, let the ball run under his foot,
Hang on.
and then then tucked it away. I mean, people are saying he miscontrolled it.
It was world class.
What is
So,
going on?
Let's be honest,
Bergkamp.
right? Yeah. So if we're giving Dennis Bergkamp credit, I'm giving Joe Linton credit. Yeah, like
Yeah.
he meant to do that, and even if he didn't mean to do it, he recovered pretty well to put it in the back of the net.
To be fair, his reaction to the ball being dummied and going behind him
By himself.
was excellent, and he took it well. And as he has with all of his goals, he's put it in the back of the net. I mean, the one that he did when he was falling over, again, even though he fell over, he still managed to put the ball away. But people are still whinging about it and moaning.
The kid can't win, can he?
They say though, don't they? Like when you're a striker, sometimes just watching the ball hit the back of the net just does you a world of good. Even if you're scoring the shittest goals, sometimes you just need to be banging the ball in, and that's it.
Well, what worries me about that, mate, is that he scored against Spurs at the very start of the season, and that didn't help.
He was probably just in shock after he scored that, to be fair.
And you know,
We were in shock.
That was a very good finish as well at the time. We went through and put it away, but I don't know.
He scored a good goal against Oxford. That was a good finish, that, when he ran through and pinged it in. Like, he took that.
Oh, no, he didn't, because it came off his shin. He shinned it in. He didn't
it went
score
perfectly
properly.
in the bottom corner. I don't know what people want him to do. Like, but,
Do you think
people
that
look
the games
at sorry, I was just gonna say people look at Mo Diarmi's goal that he scored where it basically hit off his foot, looped over and went in, and say, oh, that was an amazing goal. It's absolutely brilliant. If there's any bigger fluke in the world than that one, then Jesus, how can you be giving him grief?
Mark, I've never heard a single person say that was a fantastic goal. I've never. Everyone said that was a fluke. Not a single person.
The Twitter account didn't it?
Definitely meant it.
The official Twitter account called it a screamer.
They're literally taking a piss out of Wallow, aren't they?
Goal of the season voting, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, do you think though that the games are getting played behind closed doors without any fans in the ground? Do you think that Joe Linton will do better than what he has done with a full St James's Park?
You would think so, wouldn't you? I mean, the negativity that he does come in for, like, I mean, we see it a hell of a lot at the home games where, you know, if things don't go right, if, you know, he takes a heavy touch or gets caught offside or something like that, there's audible groans all of the time. So I think not having that pressure there is hopefully going to make him a bit more relaxed in front of goal and stuff like that. So it certainly seems to be the case in the couple of games that we've played so far. I think we've got another couple of games lined up before the season starts to again try and get that sharpness back in before ahead of the first game next week.
So I'm jumping to the next topic on this one, and Alan Armstrong has just sent in this one's for you, Shell. Just basically says
former Newcastle striker Alan Armstrong.
It says marry Reese.
Any context or?
I think people just want a wedding. I think everyone's depressed with lockdown, they want a wedding, and it
Right,
looks like
so-
it's you and Reese.
So far in the last 20 minutes, he's got to get a tattoo and he's got to get married. I mean, the commitment has really escalated for him there, hasn't it? It's going live through Sonic rings, to be honest.
Go big or go home, isn't it? You know.
He's probably sat in that front room there thinking, I'd rather get the tattoo.
Sure, he had to get a dog. He's not going to be able to cope with all this. He's thinking, I wish I hadn't signed up for this NUFC business.
Right, so another one, it is, is that Walton Matilda says, hi guys, do you think the plan will be to go big early or slowly build? So if the takeover was to go through, could you imagine money just getting thrown at the club, or is it a case where we're gradually going to build like the likes of Wolves and Leicester have over the last few years? Go with you on that one, Shell.
It's going to depend, isn't it, who we have as a manager, because we've obviously talked about Poch and Rafa, and I think, you guys have said they both have quite different styles and how they might want to bring the team forward. I think obviously we've been so starved of any decent signings for so long. It is difficult to be patient, and I'm sick of other people telling us that we should be, be patient and be happy with our bargain basement lot. But I think there'd have to be some pretty immediate signings. I mean, we've obviously spoken about Joe Linton, and also, the pressure that we put on him because we're just so desperate for goals, and the rest of the team isn't good enough, which isn't his fault. So I think we should expect that the Saudis will obviously put lots of money in, but I think that they will be guided by whoever the manager is and a director of football, if they've got one, and definitely by the scouts. And I think it'll just be nice personally to have the opportunity to be able to compete for some of the big names. I don't think we're all expecting to sign 5 players in the first season, but it'd be nice to think that you're not going to get outbid by someone in the Championship for your players.
You've mentioned the likes of scouting there, and I know Graham Carr came under a lot of criticism for some of the French players that he brought in, but we have to remember that the players on that list that Newcastle were going ahead and buying were probably 3rd, 4th, 5th on that list. We've been linked with players like I said, and the list goes on and on with those sort of players. And it wasn't the scouts' fault that Newcastle weren't buying those players. They had wrote them down and suggested them to the club. It is the likes of Mike Ashley and Lee Charnley. They're the reason why we weren't going for top of that list. So I think it's very harsh to blame the likes of scouts, and hopefully this takeover going through will start going for number 1 and number 2 on those lists, which will change the team drastically wanted.
Yeah, and I think it's keeping hold of them as well, isn't it? Because you think about, you sign someone like Wijnaldum, who's now Champions League winner, scored 2 goals against Barca in the Champions League, and they obviously just do one season, nick off straight away because they haven't got the team around them. So even if, I think we've always signed relatively well, but we've just not done it enough. It's always just been 1 or 2 good players, and then every other player in the squad's a 4 out of 10, 5 out of 10, and then they're just moving on. It's getting out of that step.
With players like Wijnaldum as well, it was a season, but you feel as if that had been here for years, don't you? Like years upon years. Was it that just the mark over you? Was it just the connection that the likes of Wijnaldum had with the fan base?
Yeah, I think that one's a bit of an unfortunate one, because obviously he joined in the season that we then obviously had the relegation. So I think in other circumstances he probably would have stayed around a little bit longer. I'm not saying he would have still be here today had that have been the case, but you would have certainly have expected him to have stayed beyond that had we not have gone down. And at least probably stay for the 3 or 4 years. So I think he came on maybe a 5-year contract when we're signing. We would generally.
It would have been me. It was 5 or 5.5 year contract.
Yeah, so I think he probably would have stayed until at least the last year of that contract if we hadn't cashed in on him at that point. So, but the thing with him is he did really, really well for her at home, and which is why he had that connection with the fans. He always put a performance in and tried. So I guess that's that connection, and you probably do feel that it was longer. I mean, Townsend is a massive one of them that we've mentioned a few times in the past. He was only here for 6 months, and again, there's no doubt in my mind, had we not have been relegated that season, that absolutely he would have stayed, and I think he probably would still be here today.
The reason why I'm keep looking down, right, is because my phone is going mental because somewhere along the line it looks like I've been tagged in the argument between Delaney and Reese. So it's just Reese has tweeted. Delaney's tweeted just back and forwards. Like, I'm gonna have to turn it off in a minute. It's ridiculous. So God knows what's going on over there.
Well, you need to be the judge in the middle of this, taking both sides of the argument and deciding who's coming out on top.
Reese, every single day. I don't even have to be in the courtroom, mate.
I'm sure that's not allowed. A bit biased.
So Daryl sends in, who's got a better hat collection, Chris or Shola? It'll be a canny competition between me and Shola, like.
Shola's definitely got more expensive hats than you.
He never said the most expensive collection. They're the
so
best.
He just said he liked them, didn't he?
Yeah.
But have you got a hat wardrobe?
I do.
Oof.
I
Right
do.
up there with Shola,
So
isn't it?
I don't. Well, it's not a hat wardrobe. It's not a wardrobe just designated to hats.
Well, see,
But
Shola had a wardrobe just for his
Well,
hats.
I've
In fact,
got
did he not have a room just for his hats?
no, it
I
wasn't
think
a room.
it was like a walk-in wardrobe, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So
I'm sure it's
I've
like
got
Yeah.
I've got like a walk-in wardrobe, and down the wall in there, it's got nails with all my hats hanging on it. So I'm a Poundland Shola.
Did you see the Harris Vukic one he did of Cribs? That came out just after Shola's one.
I didn't even know he did one,
I
mate.
didn't know
Yeah.
he'd done one. No.
And he was like, "Here is my flat screen TV," and it's just this like 12-inch little shitty telly.
32-inch
He's just
JVC.
living in one room. I'll have to try and dig that one out because
Harris's
probably no
bed
one's
sit.
seen it. Yeah, he was.
It
class
might
in
work
though.
great as a live watch, that, like just everyone watching Shola Miobi's Cribs episode, because it was absolutely fantastic.
brilliant,
My
wasn't it?
favorite part of that one, there's lots, but my favorite part is when he's looking out his window and he's the most monotone bloke as well. This is Jesmond Dean. Sometimes I like looking out the window so I can see all the trees. Then, if you turn around, I've got a canvas of Jesmond Dean so I can see it there as well. It's out your window. Why you got a canvas of it?
Would I rather look at the real thing or a picture of it?
Absolutely amazing.
He spends
I
about
like
15
his
minutes
table.
talking about his coffee table.
His coffee
yeah.
table, that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, his table. I've
It's
got this
designer, got it
table,
imported
designer
especially.
table.
Well, I was in a bar once and I saw the lights, so I decided to do it in my sitting room. Absolutely amazing. Like,
Oh,
I'll
dear me.
never ever get bored of that episode. It's up there with the greatest ever Cribs episode. It was around the time where they were doing all the Premier League players, weren't they?
Aye.
Yeah, it did quite a few from the different clubs and stuff like that.
And Shola must have been quite young when he done that one. Like,
Must have been the
He would
Robson
have been.
years. That.
Yeah. I think it was when he just kind of broken into the team and started playing regularly and stuff like that.
this is my
Oh.
car. I got it imported from America.
We doesn't live in that house anymore, so I wonder if it's one of those ones where it gets passed on to another
so
player.
I've got a story about it, mate. So
Oh, here we go.
it's owned by the club. And when I was a delivery driver, Jesmond was my area, and Czech Tiote lived in that house.
Oh, was it that one?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Czech Tiote moved into that house because I had a parcel phone next door, but then obviously I saw Tiote's car on the drive with Tiote as the reg, so I didn't even try. Like, the
Didn't even
house
try
I was supposed to go to.
Oh, no, definitely
Check.
not
You in check.
in. Is that when he signed your van?
Sign me van. Aye, sign me van. So I had a green and yellow van, and I got him to sign his name
Other
in
van
black.
colours are available.
Well, in black Sharpie across the yellow bit of my side door. Took it back to the depot, and I was like, lads, look, Tiote signed me van. And me gaffer was a massive Sunderland fan. He was not happy, like, trying to make us scrub this company-owned van that's got Tiote's name across the side of it.
What car did he have?
It was like a massive, like, American-style God. It was like a Chevrolet, I think, like a huge thing.
Yeah.
It was white with black stripe right across the middle.
Is that the one he crashed?
Probably.
Yeah.
It used to always be
It
sat.
was a Mustang or something like that, wasn't it?
It wasn't
was
like
that
a
when he was
massive,
like he had two
muscle
bottles of
car.
champagne while he was driving down the main road? With like
Was that
three
not?
women in the
Was
back?
that not when he was
Allegedly.
in
Allegedly, yeah, sorry. We're live.
Africa? It was when he was back in Ivory Coast, I think, when that happened.
All
I'm
right.
sure it was.
There's too many to remember.
But I always remember on Osborne Road there was a Lloyd's Bank on the corner, just after you go past all the bars and the hotels. And I swear to God, he was sat in that Lloyd's Bank about 3-4 times a week. Like, God knows like what he was doing. He must have just been withdrawing cash like after cash. So you know what Ben Arthur did? Didn't use Ben Arthur used to spend all of his money like the day he got it.
Kebabs.
Kebabs.
Yeah, he's
That's
another
what he was
Danny
doing,
Rose,
just
isn't
buying kebabs.
he? He used to go to Chicken Cottage, didn't he? Opposite the ground.
Yeah, constantly in there. Yeah.
Right.
Anyway.
I wonder who lives in that house now then, because I know Saint Maximum. He lives down around that area. I don't think he lives in that same house.
I thought
But
they all lived
he
in
lives in
Darras
the
Hall.
same area.
Oh, mate, all the youngins normally live like Jesmond, and Danny Simpson used to live in Jesmond. There's a few of them. They
Yeah,
used to
there's a
live,
few
Ben Arthur used to live
down
in
on the
Jesmond.
Quayside as well. Quayside, Jesmond,
fair
and
enough.
in Darras. Yeah, the
Yeah.
big one, big money's in Darras.
Well, I used to live in Dunstan, so.
Right, so James sends in, we'll put this to everyone, starting with you, Mark. So a Newcastle United player that was generally hated that you liked or loved.
Ooh.
You're probably the worst person to ask this one, because you normally the other way around. You normally hate the ones
Yeah,
that people like.
I hate ones people like.
So we'll come back to you. Go over to Shell on this one.
There's a lot of players that come in for like either a love or hate with NUFC, really.
So which one that the majority of people dislike do you have a soft spot for?
I feel like with every single player, it's always 50-50,
Difficult,
isn't it?
Yeah, like it depends. I mean, lots of people have a split opinion on Shelby. I think Shelby's brilliant. I think he should have been in the England team, in the England squad. But there's a lot
Get
of
her off.
I mean,
Get her off.
Exactly. See what I'm saying?
At one point, maybe. I think I'd probably put Perez in that bracket for me.
Get him off as well.
Exactly.
I don't know if he was generally hated, but he was probably 50-50 in the fan base, wasn't he?
He was.
I just
we've
felt
had a lot
sorry
of
for him
players like
because-
that, haven't we? That 50-50.
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone
Yeah.
that was hated universally because they used to just maybe Debussy or Kabay at one point when they refused to play. That's probably
Yeah,
but-
exactly.
Again, but they were both pretty much liked at the time until circumstances kind of went against them. I mean, you look at Joe Linton. It's the same situation, is it? You've got people that try to defend him, and those people that just won't have a good word said about him. So,
Yeah.
well, that's a tough question. That around somebody that was.
What about
disliked that I
Jermaine
liked.
Genus?
I
Niall
think
Ranger?
so.
Nah, it was-
Adam's just sent in the messages there to her that
Oh
Tovan.
yeah, it's a good
Tovan.
one.
Yeah.
How could you hate him? He didn't even play once. He didn't do enough to hate him, did he?
Tovan and
Got 4 assists on his debut and then never
it was
played again.
the other one that was signed, the other
Cabella.
French Cabella. Yeah.
Ah, yeah.
I
It's,
just
it's difficult to feel passionately about them either way, isn't it?
Well, apparently
it's a
everyone hates
really,
Loic Remy.
it is a really tough question. Loic Remy. Oh
Loic
yeah,
Remy. I couldn't believe the reaction.
He's
to him
miles,
the other
he's
day.
so-
miles better than Barn Cisse. I'll probably
So,
just lost myself 100
Jesus
followers
Christ,
there.
mate. So, just to give everyone a rundown on this one, the Chronicle had put a tweet on the other day saying, which striker would you have in your team during their prime? And the 3 strikers that they chose were Demabar, Loic Remy, and
Martins.
Obafemi Martins. And I thought straight away, personally, as someone that watched all 3 of those play, is Martins probably is bottom of that list for me. And I said that it would probably be a toss of a coin between the likes of Demabar and Loic Remy. And I was just going off the likes of that one season that Remy had at Newcastle. And a lot of people weren't happy with me saying it was a toss of a coin, saying Loic Remy was. Someone said he was shit at one point.
I couldn't believe that.
Someone said he was shit.
anything but.
But my whole point on this one is thinking people are using the likes of what Remy done at us as a club, turning us down the first time, and obviously deciding to go sign for QPR. Then obviously they got relegated, he came to Newcastle, and towards the end of that season, a lot of people accused him as faking injuries, so he could get a chance to play in the World Cup for France. But
Probably true, but it wasn't the question, was it?
it was true, 100%. But I don't think Remy was getting enough credit as what he deserved as a footballer at Newcastle.
Well, they said who was better in the prime. Barr and Cisse probably both had the prime at Newcastle, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Probably.
Yeah, pretty much.
Remy in his prime was on the cusp of the French squad. He could have been world class. If you remember, do you remember that Alexander Pato that played for Milan?
Yeah.
Who was like unreal for 6 months, then just gave up.
Did nothing.
Like Remy at his peak could have been the next Thierry Henry, and he just gave up on his career, or genuinely got injured, whatever it was. But I remember like every game he started, you just felt like you were going to score. And I think there was an element of that with Cisse and Barr, but only for, I feel like that trailed off for both of them. Whereas with Remy, I feel like it would have continued forever.
And I think we'll have to remember, Remy, when he's playing for Newcastle, he was playing a lot of time on the wing. So he wasn't up top by himself. He was playing on the wing a lot of time and cutting in and scoring. He was absolutely fantastic to watch. He was that sort of player that got you on the edge of your seat. But that's not taking anything away from Demabar, because Barr was an absolutely fantastic footballer. Hence why I said it was probably a toss of a coin between them. But if you had to pick one of those three, I'm probably not even giving Morton's enough credit as what he deserves. But who are you choosing? So you've got to pick one. We'll start with you, Shell.
I think Demba Ba, but I say that as just an all-round footballer. I think he was really brilliant. Yeah, that's it. Definitely him. I think Loic Remy did a really good job for us when we needed him to score goals. But again, I do feel a lot of footballers get their prime with us, like Andy Carroll, because of the weird way that we set up. So it gives some opportunity for wingers, etc., to just get into positions that they're not going to be really allowed to in the same way with other teams where they've got proper players in the right positions.
Yeah, fair enough.
You, Mark?
I mean, I answered the question at the time, and I did say Bar, but it was a tougher decision than some had made. And I think it probably links back to what Andy just said before there about thinking about Cabaye and not Debuchy, the other one.
Morton's? Who
No,
are you talking about?
the other right back that went to Watford.
Jan Matt.
Jan Matt. About them is that people's memories have been tainted somewhat just by what happened kind of around the circumstances of him coming to the club and leaving the club, like you mentioned, Chris. And I think that's somewhat souring the memory of how good a player like Remy was, because he was absolutely fabulous. And I think had we have had him for longer than we did, absolutely would have been probably the best striker that we'd had going back to since Shearer. But we just didn't get to see that in a long enough period, because he did have such a good time here, and then Chelsea came in, and that's probably the one thing that you can put against him is his commitment levels.
It's a very similar route to what Demba Ba did, though, isn't it? Chelsea came calling, and I'm sure was Rafa manager of Chelsea when Ba signed. I'm sure he was.
I think so, because it was when they won the Europa League, I think.
Yeah. So who's your choice on this one, Andy?
It's Remy for me. If the question is who you're taking in your prime, I mean, if I'm ranking them in my favourites, Remy's third, Cece's top, Bar's second. But if I'm saying who do I think was the best footballer in the prime, the best striker in the prime,
I don't know why you brought Cece into this, like, because he wasn't
How did
involved.
Cisse get into this?
Wait,
Which, to be fair, I thought it was unfair that he wasn't included in that.
Cisse for 3 months is the best striker the world's ever seen, wasn't he? He was unreal. But Remy was complete mercenary. So don't get us wrong, I don't really like him, but in terms of football and ability purely, I think he was the best out of the three of them. Absolutely.
I mean, as you mentioned, you said, you mentioned Thierry Henry, and that was the exact image that I had of him when he started playing for us. The way he would cut inside from that left side and come in and just try and bend one into the corner. It was just the epitome of what Henry did in his time at Arsenal. There's no doubt in my mind that had Remy have stayed at Newcastle, he would have been absolutely massive.
Yeah.
I think you've got to remember the teams that they were playing in as well. Yeah, so Demba Ba was surrounded by the likes of Cisse, Ben Arfa, Cabaye on fire on that one. So that team that Ba played in and Cisse was absolutely phenomenal, absolutely fantastic, that team. But we've got someone disagreeing with you on this one, Shell, saying that Andy Carroll never peaked at Newcastle, and I'm massively disagreeing with that, because he did. He's been absolutely appalling since he left Newcastle.
Done nothing since going elsewhere, has he? Except get injured.
Where are we saying he peaked then?
I've got no idea.
Exactly.
I've got no
He
idea.
didn't.
You're cross-examining people that have sent questions in now.
He peaked
We're
at
still
Liverpool.
talking about the pitch, or on the pitch, or off the pitch.
He definitely peaked a few times in Blue Bamboo. I witnessed that.
But people forget how good Andy Carroll was that championship season, that then going in the Premier League the season after. He was fantastic.
You don't get bought by Liverpool for 35 million if you're a mug.
I don't know if they're trying to say that he could have peaked somewhere else and he just never did. So this was like he was going to his peak, and then if he'd done better,
So surely that means he peaked at Newcastle.
Well, yeah, like in his act, but I guess I don't know if they mean potential. He had the potential to go and do bigger things, which he probably did, didn't he? But I mean, that Liverpool team was weird anyway. They signed Luis Suarez at the same time, didn't they? It's like those two signings together made no sense. It was never going to work for him there. So I think feel a bit bad for him.
Things could have worked out differently for him at Liverpool, but they were never really set up to get the best out of him. Hence why Suarez and Sturridge were so successful at the time, because they used to play a lot of stuff through the middle and on the floor and stuff like that. Whereas that's not Carroll's game, which he probably had a better better performances and career once he moved to West Ham, because they played to his strengths, although he didn't have a lot of games.
So I'll go through a couple more questions just before we wrap this one up, because I said around about an hour on this one. So someone sends in, so Mark sends in, it was Harry Redknapp's fault that we lost Ball, because he announced it on Sky Sports that he had a release clause in his contract, which is fair enough.
Yeah,
But let's remember, Demba Ba has an agent as well. So his agent would have been telling every single club that he had a release clause in that contract. So I don't think we can put all the blame on Harry Redknapp, because agents can be absolute scum just looking for a pay deal.
Well, that's why Perez ended up at Leicester, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I would have thought Chelsea's scouting network would know. They probably knew Barr had a release score. I don't think they were relying on Harry Redknapp telling them in Sky Sports News. They probably knew, didn't they?
You would have thought so.
We should be careful criticising the Redknapps as well, anyway.
Moving on.
Joke.
Let's have a look. So
big fan of Jamie, if he's watching.
He definitely is, actually.
Well, without going into too much detail, did that go any further, or did the messages just stop?
I just couldn't take it anymore. I just stopped replying. It was getting ridiculous.
Beg your pardon?
Right, so Stu sends in, do you think the Longstaffs will play for England?
They've got the best chance they're going to, aren't they, under that manager?
I think they've got the potential to. It just depends what happens at this club and with their careers, and whether or not they get the right progression, the right coaching to take them on.
Do you think so? Newcastle has been renowned for not really getting their players in the England squad up, and it always gets blamed on them being Newcastle United, not being one of the big lads in the Premier League in regards to league positions. Do you think if the takeover was to go through and would start climbing the likes of the league table and advancing in tournaments, do you think that the likes of the England manager and scouts and coaches will look at Newcastle United and the Longstaffs a lot more?
I'll just go back to the mid late 90s, when we actually had a good team. You had players that were playing for Newcastle that were in and around that. Rob Lee played regularly for England. Obviously, Shearer was the England captain at the time. There was other players. Steve Howe got called up a few times and stuff like that. So if you're good enough, and I think it's not necessarily that it's a Newcastle thing. It's that top end of the table, the big six, isn't it? Is that you're always look to be there. But there's, you look at, certainly Southgate hasn't been shy in picking players from unfashionable clubs. There's been players that have gone in there from the likes of Burnley and stuff like that. And I guess they have been flirting with the top six up there. So maybe that's impacted it. But if you're playing well and you're in that position, then you should absolutely be called up and be used in the right way.
Yeah, I think I actually think that this will just pass them. I think it'll be the next lot at Newcastle that'll come through. I think Matty and Sean have just been at the wrong time, because I think if the takeover does happen, I do think they'll get sidelined a little bit. That's one of my only sort of downsides of a potential takeover, is that if we are going to invest big, I think people like Sean and Matty, especially if they're arguing the toss over the contracts, they might just get sidelined at this point. I think if anyone, probably Matty, because I think he's the better of the two.
Blue Star sends in on the back of that, talking about the Longstaff, saying that the closest thing to Paul Scholes, which I think is a bold statement, that to compare.
Is that because just because he's ginger?
Possibly.
Helps.
They've both been compared. So I know Sean Longstaff was compared a lot against Michael Carrick.
Yeah.
But Shell on this one, Scholes is a bold statement, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, considering how much we've actually seen of Matty Longstaff playing, I think, hang on, we ought to be saving Piff some money here. So let's not be saying that they ought to be paying Paul Scholes money. Yeah, I think he's a really brilliant young player, and we've talked as well about him in the past because of the whole contract dispute. I think, as everyone said, he's got the best chance that he's got under Gareth Southgate, but it's not like Piff are going to come in and think, oh, probably need to have those Longstaff brothers playing in our starting 11 every time, is it?
I think it'll be a no-brainer as well if the new owners come in and offer Matty that new contract. It'll instantly get fans on board once again, won't it?
Absolute no-brainer. Same as taking the Sports Direct signs on. They'll probably have a list of quick wins that they can just get off straight away, and that's definitely one.
refund season ticket money as well.
Yeah, so you've got the refund of the season ticket money, you've got a long staff contract, you've got Sports Direct coming down, you've got the staff taking off furlough. The list can go on and on and on. Do you think some of the reason those things haven't happened is because of the doubt in this takeover and Mike Ashley thinking, I'm not refunding money when we don't know what's happening? Or is it a legal obligation on this one? Does he, if we're in the process of a takeover, do the books physically have to stay the same and the accounts stay the same? Or can he physically go and refund people millions of pounds?
Well, it depends what's in the contract, but usually for something like this, you basically have to just run the business as usual. There may be something in it to say you can't commit to X level of expenditure or whatever, but you just don't know until you actually look at the done contract at the end of it. If Mike Ashley really cared, though, he would have negotiated this in to say, I may need to refund season tickets later down the line. Can I have the ability to do that? But obviously he doesn't, does he? So he may be legally bound by this, but at the same time, he doesn't care. So even if he had the opportunity, he probably wouldn't, would he?
To be a little bit fair, Ashley, probably if you think when all of this
there he goes.
You started, I'm not going to defend him, but when all of this started and the contracts were getting discussed and stuff like that, and all starting to get put in place, we didn't expect the last 3 months to then go and happen with this situation. True. So, I don't know, is it one of those? I mean, we did touch on it a little bit in the last podcast around the situation, and it just seems the common sense thing that this won't be refunded, or any of these things will be resolved while the ice cream man or somebody at the door, or but it just seems like none of this will be resolved until a decision's made either way, kind of thing.
What was that noise, Shell? That was something from your side.
Was it me? Probably Miguel Delaney. Fucking come round, doesn't he?
At the door. He's coming round for Australia. Get us in, you bastard! I'll bloody stick Saudi Arabia up your ass.
All I can hear is Risha and Miguel running down the stairs or something in the background.
He's finally lost his mind.
He's off for that tattoo. Right, we'll call it a night unless you've got anything else that you want to throw in.
I think so.
No, I think I've had quite enough for tonight.
That's what she said.
Hey, and I really want to get a takeaway as well, and that's why I'm going.
Is that who was at the door, Shell? Is that what it was? It was at your tea. Did somebody say just eat?
It was one of Danny Rose's Dominoes.
We've got some tea, but I'm going to have to literally force Reese to come away from his phone because I'm just not having Miguel Delaney at dinner.
Just wait. As soon as you move away from your little station now, he's going to be back on that keyboard.
Literally.
Right, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Thanks for you three for jumping on again. And fingers crossed, I say this every single time, but fingers crossed next week will be the week.